Welcome to Mac and Bleu, the cutting-edge podcast for the nation's builders, merging the realms of construction with exciting advancements in technology. Join us on a thrilling journey where we delve into the dynamic world of blockchain, AI, the metaverse, virtual and augmented reality, and their transformative impact on the industry. Our engaging discussions span a wide spectrum, covering not only construction, economic development, supply chain, and market segments, but also exploring the vibrant tapestry of diversity within the construction landscape. We shed light on the intersection of local politics and its profound influence on the construction sector, while championing the remarkable contributions of women and minorities in construction. For all things Mac and Bleu, head to www.macandbleu.com, and don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. I'm your host, JJ Levinsky. Now let's get into it. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Mac and Bleu. I'm your host, JJ Levinsky, CEO and co-founder of Bleu Wave. Today, I'm honored to have Andy Maurer. Did I screw up your name there?
No, you got it right.
The only guy, Maurer, that's got two R's. I don't know if his ancestors couldn't spell, but it's all good. To me, I look and it should be Maurer.
That's how everybody says it, but they say it wrong.
Yeah.
It's German.
Yeah, obviously. Andy, welcome. So, Andy is the CEO and founder of Pursue Whole. Is it coaching? Is that the proper name of the firm?
Just Pursue Whole.
Okay.
I co-founded it with my wife back in 2020.
Oh, see, I did get the
co-founding. So she was
right.
actually from the luxury wedding industry. She came over with me and does a lot of our branding and strategy.
Okay. So full disclosure, I indirectly met Andy through Vistage because Chris Gonzalez, right?
Yeah.
He spoke at one of our groups, and then once I saw, it was a wonderful presentation, by the way. And then once I saw kind of the ethos and who was behind it, it was obviously you.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, I'm going to get a hold of this guy, and you had another face for radio, so it was perfect to get that video out there.
Absolutely.
So welcome. Before we dive into all the cool stuff, do you mind sharing a little bit? Let's go in the background.
Yeah.
Hey, this guy's, just so everyone knows, Andy's well educated. He's got more degrees here than I think I had, probationary tickets or anything. So do you mind talking about this Master of Divinity, professional counseling? I mean, you're obviously into the headspace of a lot of people.
Yeah, I love education. I didn't love education growing up.
Oh, really?
So I wasn't a great student through grade school, high school. I probably missed 20 days in my senior year of high school. And
It's called the junior.
Somehow passed. And then when I went off to college, I actually went to community college at Mesa Community College and didn't really know what I wanted to do and thought that somehow I could miss classes on midterms and finals and pass classes. And I learned really hard that I can't do that if I want to succeed in life. So that was a big gut check for me.
Yeah.
And I think part of the issue there is I didn't find something that I was really passionate about. And when I realized that I could restart by going to ASU and actually not having my horrible GPA follow me, I was really passionate. I'm like, I got another chance to try it again. And I went to ASU and I studied exercise and wellness with a concentration in health promotion. And I got pretty much a 4.0 at ASU. I was very passionate about it. I loved fitness and education. And I wanted to help companies have healthier employees and help people be healthier. So that's actually how I started out. And I was a personal trainer for 10 years. I did in-home training and I worked with companies to build out their corporate wellness programs because 15 years ago, corporate wellness was huge. I mean, that was the rave of conversation on employee benefits and saving cash by healthy employees. So I kind of jumped on that wave and started to train employees and create health promotion programs. As I started to do that, I realized, not very beneficial for someone to be physically fit if they're not emotionally fit. And you can look good on the outside and not feel good on the inside. And that was really what I was bumping up against with a lot of my clients. So I went back to school. I got my master's in marriage and family therapy. And in addition to that, I got my master's of divinity. I like faith. I grew up from a faith perspective, and everybody to some degree has some form of spirituality or a belief about the world or a framework on why they're here and why it matters. And I recognized that I wanted to help people physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So that's how I started off. And then after that, I became a licensed therapist for about 5 years. My specialty was in trauma and abuse because if you work with leaders long enough, all you have to do is pick up a book on childhood trauma, and you realize that that's actually the story of a lot of these leaders and why they're so driven and also why they're so broken on the inside. So I studied that knowing that I had to do a lot of healing on my own life, but also it was going to set me up really well to work with leaders.
Mic drop. We're done. No, just kidding. Thank you. That was very informative. I spawned a million questions that I want to ask you, which we'll probably run out of time today, but that's fine. Before we go there, though, I love these things. Most people know that follow Mac and Bleu that we like to do this background stuff. So I have to read this because you're the first guy that's ever filled this out this honestly.
Fantastic.
The hobbies. You guys are going to love this. Breakdancing, weight training. Obviously, the guy's ripped like a, Olympic athlete right here. Sleight of hand magic and movies. Okay.
Absolutely.
Everything you described was the physical part of you growing up.
Yeah.
Were you an athlete? Were you in sports?
I didn't.
Or were you the opposite where you got picked on and then sports was that outlier?
I started weight training when I was about 15 because my oldest brother, I'm the youngest of 4 boys.
He started training.
So I liked the idea of physically being fit. And here's a little bit of the backstory on why this was so important for me, JJ, because I grew up with a condition called hyperhidrosis. So
what is that?
With hyperhidrosis, your hands, your feet, and your armpits sweat profusely. So
really?
Not just a little bit. I couldn't even do my homework in school because my paper would be drenched. If I held my hand up, it would drip sweat off of it. I would have these massive rings in my shirt. I'd have to wear black shirts to school or take extra shirts to switch out. I could never shake someone's hand because they'd be like, oh, gross, it's all sweaty. So for me, I learned really early on that, man, my body is betraying me. It's not working the way it's supposed to work. So fitness was actually a way where I learned how to feel proud about my body.
Good for you.
To feel a sense of accomplishment and start to reconnect with my body in really powerful ways. So fitness was a lifesaver for me, and I feel the best mentally and emotionally when I exercise. So in seasons when I can't get to the gym for weeks on end, I don't feel good emotionally.
Yeah.
When I'm pushing myself emotionally, it allows me to push myself mentally and emotionally.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, was that genetic? I've heard of that before, but
it's pretty, it is genetic. No one in my family has it. It's about 1% of the population has it.
It's kind of carry like a recessive gene or something.
Yes. Okay. And then I actually got a surgery out in California called an endoscopic surgery when I was about, coming into high school, and that actually stopped the sweating on my hands and my armpit. I still sweat on my feet. I still sweat on my chest and my back quite a bit. And that's why living in Arizona in the summer is absolutely horrible. But I've navigated it for years on end. And that was a game changer for me because now socially I could engage with people in a much more free way. And I had to do a lot of work to heal some of my pain there as well.
I hear this and I can just empathize to go, let's be honest, we've all been in junior high and high school where any little thing just gets exploited, like, hey, you got a pimple on your nose, it's like this. And, for you, I can only imagine. But yeah, I could see how, all of a sudden you overcame it both self-esteem wise, but then physically too. It's like, hey, wow, look at, Andy's cut, Andy's built, right. Andy's the stud.
With a lot of insecurity on the inside. Yeah. And that's what I really realized around fitness is you can look confident, you can be confident, but that doesn't mean that you feel secure on the inside.
All right, breakdancing. Come on.
Yeah.
What's the story?
Okay, so this was another really fun thing I got into because I always wanted to do gymnastics, but I couldn't because of my hands and my feet. And in gymnastics, you typically don't have shoes on and you're holding on to bars, and I just couldn't do that. So I actually taught gymnastics to little kids. That was really cool for me. And then I got into open gym, which we would go in high school and college and go to these open gymnastics gyms and play around with all the different equipment. And I had a buddy of mine who's now in California who started breakdancing. And we started a little crew. And for 4 years, I would breakdance, and we go to the mall and we lay out linoleum and we do our breakdance routine. And the reason why I love breakdancing is because anyone who ever sees it is drawn to it. And for me, that was really cool that I could do a skill that people are drawn to. And now I have 3 boys, 9, 6, and 3. My 9-year-old and 6-year-old actually do breakdancing now.
I love it.
And tonight I'll go with them. They'll do their class. And then after that, they will do a class with me. So I'm actually getting back into it. I pulled my neck out last week in our first session together, just doing like the most basic movement. And I strained my neck and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a long road back. But I'm persistent. And dance for me, JJ, when you think about trauma, when you think about healing your relationship with your body and emotionally, dance is one of the best things for you. research and science shows that trauma is about disconnecting from your body. And here's the reality. Everybody has trauma.
Yes.
Everybody has trauma, maybe not big T trauma, but little t trauma. It's called toxic stress. I don't know one leader who hasn't had toxic stress. And when we feel stressed like that, we don't want to feel in our body. We want to get away from our body because our body is what carries emotion. So dance is actually a really cool way to heal and come back into our body and feel mindful and connected and grounded.
Brilliantly said.
And it has nothing to do with my professional career. That's why I love it.
Okay, now we're almost to the meat of it. What about we got to do justice to your wife and kids? You're married and kids, right?
Yes, I've been married to my wife for 13 years. Her name's Charity. I have 3 boys: Achilles Jonathan, Cyrus Alexander, and Maximus Hissed.
Ooh,
okay, so
powerful names.
Those 3 names represent Achilles as our tender warrior, Cyrus is our brave king, and Maximus is our great love. And all their names, based on the etymology of them, represent kind of those titles.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, very intentional.
I love that. All right, so now we can get into.
There we go.
I love how you set the table. Now, talk to us about how the incubator, if you will, or how this all started with Pursue.
Yeah, with Pursue Whole.
Or sorry, I didn't give it Pursue Whole.
With Pursue Whole, I was a licensed therapist for 5 years, and I started working with a lot of leaders in the Valley.
Okay.
And therapy is really helpful to a large degree, but there's a couple pain points on therapy that weren't connecting with leaders. One is when you go into therapy, a therapist, if they are diagnosing, they have to put something down on a diagnosis: depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, bipolar, whatever it is. So you're looking for a diagnosis, and then your goal in therapy is to treat that diagnosis. Well, sometimes...
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
What I'm unclear of is, did you start with the person or the company? In other words, you know what I'm asking? Like, how did people find out about Andy? Was it just
for therapy practices?
Okay, so you were there more for like screwed up marriages, screwed up interpersonal self-esteem. It had nothing to do with being a business coach.
No, it wasn't anything about business
leadership. You see where I'm going
leadership.
with this? Yeah.
Okay. It was primarily about struggling in my marriage, addiction, all different pain points, trauma, abuse, whatever it is. People would come in and they'd unload, and they'd need a safe place to process.
Got it. Thank you for that clarification.
Absolutely.
Go. Okay.
But when I started to do that, a lot of what we were doing in therapy was a little too deep for leaders. It was a little bit too intense, and these leaders had to go back out and perform. So they'd come see me, unload, open up, cry, have this crazy session, and then they'd go out and they'd have to kind of pull it back together and be on. And
would you almost say duplicitous almost?
A little bit, yeah. Like I get to open up here, but then I got to close up when I leave. And hear me, therapy is amazing. I've been in therapy most of my life. It's very healing, very cathartic. But therapy is not for every leader. And then the other option that they have is executive coaching, which is really beneficial. I know a lot of great executive coaches that can help with team dynamics. They can help with building team culture, helping you grow your business. But executive coaches are not trained clinically to peel the onion and address what's actually going on below the line subconsciously. So you have these 2 spectrums of options. And I thought, what if leaders had a third option? What if we took the best of therapy and the best executive coaching? And that's what we really built our model around in Pursue Whole. And our whole mission in Pursue Whole is to help leaders pursue a connected and meaningful vision for their life, leadership, and relationships. We wanted them to have more connection. We wanted them to have more vision on life, leadership, and relationships. And part of that is doing deep work to figure out what's going on below the line in your marriage, in your identity, in your anxiety, in your depression, and figure out how to deal with that so you can cast a vision on who you want to be as a person.
It's pretty deep.
Yeah, but it's the type of work that leaders need because no book is going to help you get there. No leadership course is going to help you peel the onion there. You got to do deep work. And one thing we always say in Pursue Whole is pain is the pathway to growth.
Yeah.
And, I've been in the fitness industry a long time. Anything that's meaningful is on the other side of hard work. I actually teach this to my son. I say, Achilles, what do I say? Everything that's on the other side or everything that's meaningful and good and purposeful in life is on the other side of what? And he says hard work. So kids know that, adults know that, But we have to do some of the deep, more relational and emotional work if we want access to the goodies on the other side, which is things like connection, purpose, meaning, creativity. And the other thing we say at Pursue Whole is leaders are responsible for casting vision, but it's actually the vision that creates the legacy. And what I mean by that is vision is about the life that you want to live. Legacy is about the impact of your death when you're gone. So as leaders, we need to think about how do we want to shape the people around us today? Mm-hmm. But when we're gone, will we actually be remembered? Will people be happy that we are no longer here? Or will they miss us because of the impact that we had on their life? And that's called legacy. Yeah. You don't get to legacy unless you have a clear vision, and you don't get to a clear vision if you're not dealing with your pain on the inside.
That's good. Take me back to the first couple of clients that you had once you put this summation together. What was it like? Because it's profound of what you did. I mean, you entered an abyss that I'm sure people had tried before and failed, but you obviously have become successful with it. But I think it would be remiss if we didn't share with the audience, what was it like for those first, half a dozen clients, and what were your lessons learned?
Yeah. A lot of lessons, a lot of lessons learned. I mean, I came from therapy, which was very rigid.
Yeah.
You cannot have a dual relationship with the client. So if you see them in the office in therapy, you can't grab coffee with them. They can't be your friend outside of therapy. Oh. There's legal and ethical guidelines around that. So, when my clients, we'd connect and then they'd say, hey, let's grab coffee. I'd be like, I don't know if I'm allowed to do that. I don't know if I'm supposed to do that. So I had to get really comfortable slowly over the last 3 years on recognizing, okay, I can have friendships with my clients and do really deep work with them. And that's actually really healthy. It's actually more unhealthy in some ways if they come and they have this safe, sacred place, but then I can't connect with them outside of that space when they just
it's kind of hypocritical for what the work you're doing.
Yeah, and I really love I love my clients. I work with some amazing leaders in the Valley. I mean, I only work with the best of the best. Like, they are leaders who love others. They shape the worlds around them. They're doing hard work to become better people, husbands. So I work with amazing leaders. But that was one difficult thing for me, is to recognize, how do I, be friends with these people, but then also create a safe space for them to open up and process. And I think the other thing I learned really early on that was hard is these leaders can smell from a mile away whether you want something from them. So I had to get really good at making sure that I'm not taking advantage of them, because I work with some amazing leaders. Very easily I could ask them for an introduction, or I could ask them for a gig, or I could get something from them. But the reality is everybody's doing that to them. They don't know who their friends are because everybody wants their money, their time, their energy. So I had to work really hard at making sure that I keep it confidential and making sure that I don't keep it about myself. It has to be about them. So that means really making sure that the space is safe, and I'm not going around and talking about, hey, do you know who my client is and who I work with, just so I can feel better. And that takes a lot of
I just
discipline.
realized Maurer isn't German, it's Swiss. It's Switzerland.
Well, Messner is my mom's name, and
there we
Messner
go.
is Swiss.
See?
Mauer's German.
See,
so
you
just together.
I'm Switzerland. You personify the traditions of neutrality.
There you go.
Okay, so that was brilliantly said. I'm trying to think. What do I want to ask you next on that one? What were some of the breakthroughs that you had
with clients?
Yeah, early on. Like, when did you know? And again, I don't expect you to share names, but I think the audience would love to hear, like, oh wow, like, could you give an example or a testimonial of something where you knew of, okay, Bob, let's use Bob.
This is doing something.
Like, you went home to your wife and said, all right, we've cracked the code. This is what happened.
I think really being able to see a lot of these leaders, specifically men, reach a point where they accept and open up about emotionally what's going on for them. they notoriously have to be so strong for everybody in their life, their spouse, their wife, their community, their employees. And for them to finally reach a space and a point in our coaching where they felt safe enough to say, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm headed. I don't know who I am. And to see emotion actually come out and to see tears come out. Because to me, that was a massive win, because I created a safe enough spot for them to show the most vulnerable parts of themselves and let those parts out that they couldn't let out with anyone else. But you know what, JJ? Most times when they do that, they feel so much better afterwards. It's like after they cry and after they say it's too hard or I can't do this anymore, and they let out emotion, and I sit with them and I hear them and I know them in that, oftentimes they're like, man, that was a lot, but I feel a lot better.
Yeah.
I've been trying to hold that together for 6 months, 12 months, and I finally got to let it out, and I feel so much more free. I feel so much more alive. I don't have to hide that anymore. And to me, I'm like, man, I want to create a safe space where leaders don't have to feel like they have to hold all that crap together. Like, I want them to feel like I can let all the shit go and I can be open, and someone is there to listen and hear. And also that person doesn't need me to be their leader.
I think that's key, right?
They don't need, my clients don't have to show up for me. And that's the biggest thing. I'm there for them.
Yeah.
And that's very freeing for them, because they don't have spaces where they can just open up and share and not have to be on. And I've specifically worked hard to be that rock for these leaders so they don't have to be the rock.
Yeah.
There comes a time when dreams become a reality, when you see your vision materialize into a true work of art. And the only way to get there is to choose a general contractor who shares that same vision and knows how to bring it to life. At Bleu, we aren't so big that we've forgotten where we've come from, and we aren't so small that we can't care for your projects regardless of their size. When your vision deserves safety, perfection, timeliness, and expertise in order to become a reality, trust Bleu to get it done right the first time.
On that, let's take a bit of a tangent, and I'll open up to the audience for those that don't know. I was lucky enough to meet someone like you about 2 years ago. Did the same thing. Figured out the little T, barfed all over the table. Yeah. Fantastic feeling of finding how, like for myself, I was probably, I am on the Asperger's spectrum, and didn't understand what all that meant, right? So my traumas were, I want, the reason I'm saying this is I want to use it as a catalyst to start our next conversation, because I really want you to dive into the trauma piece, because most people do not understand trauma unless they've been in a consultation like what you and I are going to go through right now. So again, I'll kind of put my pants down around my ankle and share what mine was. Mine had nothing to do with like abuse. And I can say that I did it in a group setting where I was one of 4 CEOs where we did like an executive retreat. Much like what you said, it was the emotional part meets the executive coaching part, but we still did all back down to trauma and how to get over those things. In that though, my 3 counterparts, again, I don't need to use their names, but to put it in context for the audience, one was at 9/11 and was an ex-firefighter. Can you imagine what he saw on that day? You talk about trauma. When he was on the table for his 6-hour session, I don't think I stopped crying for 6 hours. To hear the horrific things that he saw, felt, and was still dealing with, how many years after 9/11. Then another colleague in the group, it was a typical parent abandonment type thing that you hear about. And then the other one was more of a kind of that rough relationship with the wife, almost abandonment from a spousal connection, that kind of thing. Where mine was more perceived because of the way that my brain works. I could not see how people, like I for 20 years I was frustrated. Like, why can't you see what I see? Because I'm on an Asperger. I can process things at 8 million miles an hour.
Totally.
And I'm like, Andy, what is your effing problem? Can't you see that 1 + 1 to the nth power is this? And so my mind, So my trauma was the guilt of living up to my own expectations. Nothing that you guys could do.
Yeah. It's you facing yourself.
Yeah. And so once he helped me see that, it was like you said, this uplifting thing. So with that, with just my little storytelling here, I would love to, and I know we don't have enough time to go into your deep thesis of this, but if we take nothing away from this podcast today to let the audience realize, help me put framework around someone listening to where they know they can come find someone like you in the industry about the little T.
Yeah.
Did I tee that up okay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
I think the best way to think about it is toxic stress. It's a very common topic. You can research it. Harvard has done a lot of research on toxic stress and its impact on children. And to simply define toxic stress, we can say that toxic stress is prolonged and elevated stress in the absence of deep connection. So you have prolonged and elevated stress in the absence of deep connection. That is the epitome of what we've gone through the last couple of years. Okay? You think about it. Prolonged and elevated stress, absolutely. Absence of deep connection, yes. Leaders are without deep connection. They have connections that are a mile wide and an inch deep. And then all the crap rolls up to them in an organization. Everybody needs things from them. All the fires roll up to them, and they don't have anyone above them who's there for them. So leaders are at the pinnacle and the spear tip of toxic stress. Now, whether you want to call that trauma or not, that does something in the brain. It activates fight, flight, freeze, or submit. Now, we often forget about the one around submit, but we learned a lot around that in the Me Too movement, right? Because we have fight, flight, or freeze, but then we have, these women coming out and we're like, well, nothing really happened to you because you kind of went along with it. Well, what we need to recognize is when someone submits to sexual acts like that, what's really happening is they're not going along with it. They're afraid and their survival system is kicking in because there's a threat there. So we need to broaden that around fight, flight, freeze, or submit rather than just saying, well, I either fight or I run away or I freeze. No, sometimes we actually lean into a relationship that's unhealthy and toxic simply because we don't want to get hurt. And it looks like we're participating, but we're not.
Yep.
So we need to have proper definition around that. But whenever we go into fight, flight, or freeze around stress, we lose the capacity to use our logical and linear brain called our prefrontal cortex, which is your neocortex goes all the way over, and then your prefrontal cortex is in the front of your head. That is a linear, logical thinking part of your brain. When we are flooded with stress, when we're emotionally distressed, or we come home and our marriage is in tatters, or we lost a big client, we go to that state, we're not thinking rationally. Oh. We are thinking about how to fight the world, flee from the world through escapism behaviors. So you either go to alcohol, you go to sex, you go to all these different things to escape, or you freeze. Now you get into paralysis on decision making. Okay, all leaders know this, right? Like they have so many decisions on their plate that they just freeze and they don't know how to make decisions. They become super anxious because what if I make this and I let this person down? So leaders will find themselves in either fighting, they're too aggressive, they're over the top, they're demeaning people, they'll flee, they'll escape. People like, where were you all last week? And they were checked out and doing things they shouldn't be doing and, numbing out. Or freeze, where people need these leaders to show up, but they can't make decisions because they're scared to death and all they can do is feel paralysis. Those are some really good symptoms that you're living a life of trauma rather than having a moment of trauma. So think of it like this. You need to ask yourself, am I living a moment of survival or am I living a lifestyle of survival? Moments of survival are actually really healthy. If there was a fire in this building or an explosion and we had to run out of here, I'd probably feel elevated cortisol. I'd probably feel freaked out and I need to talk to my wife and my friends about this crazy thing that happened today. I would have an elevation in stress in that moment, an elevation in that traumatic event. What's not healthy though is if I spend my whole life entering into rooms and wondering, is something going to happen bad here? Is something dangerous going to happen? And a lot of leaders do that in relationships. They come into relationships and they read the person on, am I okay? Are they okay? And then they kind of morph and shift into becoming whatever the other person wants to keep it safe. Like, I don't want them to abandon me. I want them to like me. So I'll show up however I'm supposed to show up here. And that's actually a survival mechanism called codependence, which is the ability that we don't know who we are. We're just absorbing into whatever anyone wants us to become. But then we lose our sense of security. We lose our sense of confidence. We don't know how to make decisions. And it becomes really toxic and difficult for leadership.
Go into the one that while you were talking, the one that I wrote down because it came up in our group was the deep connection. Truth be told, once that kind of hit me upside the head with about 4 2x4s, I cannot unsee it now, right? So myself included, but everyone else that I meet that's a high functioning entrepreneur, we do not have deep connections. Yeah. That's the one. We're driven. But yet the connection piece is what we're striving for.
Absolutely.
And the moments when you have that, I'll speak freely about myself, is like I had a moment last Friday, I'll never forget it. All my connections, I had a wonderful day of connection. Guess what, at the end of the day, no stress, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, so when you brought that up, I was like,
I felt
Andy,
good.
I hear you clucking big chicken, you know,
Yeah.
But can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely.
Because I'm sure you see it all the time.
Yeah, and I've had to figure out what this looks like in my own life as a
Really?
leader, because I'm in a position where
You come across as a guy that has super deep connection all the time.
I wouldn't say all the time. I've actually had to work really hard to cultivate that in my life because I'm prone to take care of other people and not let them take care of me. That's kind of my helper nature. So I've had to get really good at letting people take care of me as much as I take care of them. And relationships are not one way. So if you're a leader and you're taking care of a lot of people, that's not relationship. It is, but it's not deep connection. Deep connection is what we call interpersonal connection, which is this back and forth. I know you, you know me, I'm here for you, you're here for me. Leaders are really good at like one-sided, like I'll take care of you. What can I do for you? They're not really good at opening up and letting people care for them. So problems with deep connection for leaders really come in because they struggle to tell people they need help. They struggle to let people know that they're having a hard time or that they're hurting or that they can't do it or they need support. And I've talked to some of those leaders before, and I just say, you are, because you're not letting people see your weaknesses and your needs, they have no way to love you. So of course you feel lonely because you haven't opened up opportunity for people to love you because you have no needs. You're needless and you're wantless. And it's like, how can someone love someone who's needless and wantless? Because as soon as we try to love them, no, I'm fine. What can I do for you? And if you're going to have deep connection, you got to be in a place where you can open up and be honest about your own struggles and have other people be there and see you. And a lot of this, honestly, JJ, has to do with they don't know who they are and they lack purpose and identity. So this is one thing we do a lot with our clients is we help them discover, who are you? What do you want? What do you feel? And what do you need? Because leaders have become everything that everyone else wants them to become. Mm-hmm. They're great salespeople. They're great chameleons. But at the end of the day, if you ask
Sean,
them, like,
what kind of lizard are you?
Exactly. It's like, who are you though? And it's like, I don't know. I've become whatever my wife wants, whatever my kids need, whatever my employees need. And you really have to peel that back. And we created a whole framework that leaders can kind of move through on that, which we call our purpose and identity framework, where leaders can enter in and actually walk through some of these questions to discover and get to a one-pager on what's my purpose, what's my motivation, why am I here, why does it matter, and who's my tribe that I need in order to get here. When we can discover those things, then we can share those things with other people and actually let them get to know us. The problem is we don't know ourselves, so we can't share who we are with others. So you might actually have to do some deeper work and deal with your own purpose and identity, then be able to share that with people and let them in to know who you truly are.
By the way, he's just promoting himself because I swear to God, in the last 72 hours, I've seen a bunch of your coaching clients on LinkedIn or wherever, the purpose and identity thing that you launched. So Absolutely. Can you let that, what was it? How is it out? Is is it part of your coaching, or is it exclusive of that, mutually exclusive? How does it all work? Or give us it's a book that you published, correct? Or is it a workbook?
Yeah, we call them vision guides.
Okay.
So we believe that leaders are really good at action and they're poor at self-awareness, okay?
Agreed.
So any leader who's high-level CEO, driven, professional athlete, CEO, entrepreneur, entertainment executive, they are where they are because they're good at performing.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that they're good at self-awareness and casting vision on who they want to be. So what we decided to do was create a framework, which is a 6-process framework to help people describe who they are, where they're headed, what do they want, and why does it matter. And through this book that we created called the Vision Guide, they will end with a 1-page document where they write their answers in, and they can tear out this 1 page and they can post it to a wall. And this is their 1-page document that clearly identifies what is their purpose and what's their identity and why the heck does it matter.
So I think if I go back when Chris presented to our Vistage group, I think that's what he gave at the end of the.
Absolutely.
I think he gave a Reader's Digest version of how we go through it. But if I remember right, he was kind enough to read his and share it. And I mean, it was deep.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
I have in my office, I have probably 20 of my clients' plaques. We give them a metal plaque when they're finished on their 1-pager because this is something they do in our coaching process. We go deep in this in coaching. So we not only do this, but this is one of the elements of our coaching process is we help them define that 1-page document, and then they print it on a metal plaque and we give it to them. And a lot of my clients feel proud about the work that they do, and they want to represent that on my wall. And it's a really cool manifestation of their hard work, and they feel proud about it when they show it to their teams and their spouses and their friends. I've had numerous leaders say, I showed this to my friend and they were like, that's amazing. Like, how do I do this? Because I don't know who I am and where I'm headed. And you have this all simplified into 1 page. That's amazing. Now they did tons of work to get there. But that is one of the things that we do in coaching, and it's available now for people if they want to order that and they want to walk through that. We wanted to make that accessible for more leaders who might not have access to coaching with me.
Before we get into all that kind of stuff of your business model and how to engage with you, in the pre-work, I realized that I normally don't read this, but this one is important enough that I want to almost ask it in a scripted question to you.
Yeah.
Can you share a success story where your coaching model made a significant positive impact on a leader's emotional and relational health? Again, without mentioning names, can you think of an example that the audience would love to hear about where you really, really helped transform someone's life?
Yeah, leaders come to me in 2 different stages of life. They either come to me because life's not going well. Their marriage is struggling, their teams are struggling, they feel anxiety, they feel immense amount of pressure, they don't know who they are. Or they come to me because they're in a pretty good spot, but they have something...
Glass ceiling?
Well, they have something big ahead for them.
Okay.
They want to take it to the next level, or they want clarity about the next 5 to 10 years. They're not really in crisis, but they are because they don't know what's next. They don't know where they're headed. They don't know what the next 5 to 10 years looks like. And a lot of leaders that I work with, as they become more emotionally intelligent and they actually learn about what is emotion, why does it matter, and how do I express it in a way that is actually vulnerable, I think the biggest impact comes out at home, honestly. I have met these spouses of these leaders, and they'll come up to me and they will say, thank you so much for working with my husband, or thank you so much for working with my wife. It has made a massive impact in our marriage that they are actually able to be less controlling, more kind, don't come home with all their stress, but are actually able to find balance where they can be present at home, where we can actually have deep, emotionally connected conversations where he or she is actually able to not just tell me what I need to do with my problems, but it can actually feel with me in my problems. So it shows up most at home. And then I'll say, JJ, on the leadership side, I think boundaries is really where it comes to tea, because these leaders are learning how to say no a lot more in their life. They're learning how to create limitation. And we believe at Pursue Whole that limitation breeds joy. And what we mean by that is all these leaders, or a lot of these leaders, they say yes to absolutely everything, but then they can't follow through and commit to everything. So their relationships are disrupted because people are like, hey, you said you were going to do that and you never did it. But these leaders, what they're actually doing is they're taking a step back and saying, you know what, let me think about that before I commit. Actually, I can't do that. Or they put it back on their teams, and their teams come with these great ideas, and they're like, you know what, sounds like a great idea. Why don't you put together a pitch on why you believe that that's in line with our company values, what you believe that will do for our company, and bring it to our leadership team meeting, and you can tell us and pitch that to us instead of the leader basically taking on that responsibility. They put it back on their teams. And I will say the last thing that I've seen happen is that these leaders stop saving people. They stop entering in when people are hurting and kind of want to alleviate their pain. They let people struggle because they know that struggle is a pathway to growth. So for these leaders, they see one of their team members hurting and they want to make it better, or how can I fix it? And instead, they've learned to just say, hey, that's really hard. Thank you for sharing that with me. Is there any way that I can be in this with you? But they don't take responsibility for people's problems, but they are responsible to people's problems.
Big difference.
And that's a big difference, because you can be responsible for people's problems and not sleep at night because it's your fault that everyone's sad or depressed or struggling in life. Or you can say, actually, the way they feel is not my fault. It's not my problem. But as a leader, how do I be responsible by reaching out to them and saying, hey, I care about you. Let's have a conversation. Is there anything that I can do on your behalf? But when I leave this relationship, I'm not going to be thinking about you when I fall asleep at night, because your problems are your problems, but I am here for you.
Yeah.
There comes a time when dreams become a reality, when you see your vision materialize into a true work of art. And the only way to get there is to choose a general contractor who shares that same vision and knows how to bring it to life. At Bleu, we aren't so big that we've forgotten where we've come from, and we aren't so small that we can't care for your projects regardless of their size. When your vision deserves safety, perfection, timeliness, and expertise in order to become a reality, trust Bleu to get it done right the first time.
That was pretty profound. That's a big difference too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good question.
Well stated. Okay, let's go back a little bit more into your actual business. I'm helping you do a little pitch for Pursue Whole.
Sure.
But give the framework of how you're typically engaged with people, because we kind of went off on 10 different tangents. You know, you've got these workshops. I mean, I've met you kind of vicariously through Vistage.
Yeah.
What's your typical, not relationship, but just how are you out in the marketplace?
Yeah.
And then how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, I engage with a lot of CEO groups. We work with 3 primary leadership groups. We work with professional athletes.
Okay.
We work with high-end leaders. So typically it's the CEO of a business. Sometimes we'll work with other chiefs or other executives, but it's typically the CEO. And then we'll work with entertainment executives. So it could be producers, directors, writers, anyone in the
Sean,
entertainment
there's hope
industry.
for you after all.
Absolutely. So those are
Not
three
much, but some
primary,
hope.
those are 3 primary categories. And then what it typically looks like is we'll work on a 6-month basis. So they will sign up for 6 months for a coaching process. And at that time, they will either meet with me every week for 45 minutes, or we'll meet every other week for 90 minutes. Some people can't handle a full 90 minutes of deep processing, so they would rather do more frequent but shorter sessions. 90% of the time, people continue on after 6 months. And I think that's a real testimony to what we do at Pursue Whole, because it's not a cheap program. We work with high-end clients, and our price point is a premium price point.
Commensurate with that, yeah.
Absolutely. But we find that 90% of our clients say, hey, after the 6 months, let's continue on at the same frequency or drop frequency a little bit, because this has brought a lot of life.
Pretty good testament to your value then.
Absolutely. And clients want to continue on. And the other thing that I love doing with clients is just connecting them with other great leaders. So I try to add as much value as I can. So when I work with leaders, I'm positioning and networking them with other leaders that I've worked with and other people in the community to help them be better, either professionally or personally. So I'm making introductions all the time for people because I believe that I know some really amazing, great leaders, and I want these leaders to connect and have community and have deep relationships. So I'll connect people through the process always.
So, and again, not to put you on the spot, that answers this, but over here, correct me if I'm wrong, through the vision guide, you're able to still get to people and effectuate their potential change on a non, what am I trying to say? On a non-retainer basis.
Yeah.
So you do have some other areas that people can still work with you. Again, back to maybe their price point or whatever. So am I getting that correct?
Yeah, to work with me specifically, it is through coaching. If you want to work with our framework and model, you can purchase our vision guides online at store.pursuewhole.com.
That's what, okay.
So you can access our resources and work through those on your own. The other thing that we do, though, which I love, is working with a lot of CEO groups. So whether it's YPO, EO, Vistage.
The usual.
Yeah, the big kind of groups with a bunch of leaders, we love to come in and take them through a process on how to have deeper connection, how to ask better questions, how to dig deeper about themselves and in community. And we're creating right now a facilitator guide that these groups would be able to actually purchase our vision guides, and we would have a facilitator come in and guide them through that process, or give them a guide that they can actually complete that in their Vistage or CEO group without us there.
Well, but again, for you get 1 out of 20 in there that wants to come and sign up for the, I mean, it's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah. And these are, like I said, these are amazing leaders. I don't take on everybody. I take on a unique type of person who's at a right place and right time to do this work. So I try to pick and choose my clients very carefully, because I know that if I'm referring out, I want to refer to some of the best leaders. And that typically has to do with the type of person who is really in the community, pouring out for others. They care about others. They're serving others. I don't enjoy taking on, nor do I take on, people who are more narcissistic and people who think they're the just, freshest thing in the box. I typically will say,
Andy, I'm the bum.
You can go be with another coach, because I'm not going to spend 6 months with you when there's another leader out there who's a great person, really, who needs some help. And I want to reserve slots for those people.
Hey, I realized you brought up your wife early on in the business. Is she still engaged?
Oh yeah, she's our co-founder still. She works with us full time in the business, and she works strategy and branding and marketing for Pursue Whole.
Oh, nice.
So she's amazing, and she's really helped us cultivate our core values and our brand position. And she actually has her own business in addition to what Pursue Whole does, and she works with a lot of my leaders actually on helping them align their ventures with their values.
Oh, wow.
What I mean by that is leaders who have core values, mission, and vision. You heard me say mine clearly. A lot of leaders, it's like makeup on a pig's face. Like, values don't mean much. They're old, they're outdated. So she actually works with a leader to craft values, vision, and mission, and then identifies their 3 core distinctives in their business and why those matter and how they're connected to the leader and also connected to the brand. She helps write those for the leaders, curate those, and she's done that for us. She's amazing at that, and she's helped a lot of our leaders actually do the same thing. And you can go on her website at charitymaurer.com and look at some of her framework and process that she does.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, she's amazing. I wouldn't be here without her. She's definitely my better half. I'm a visionary. I'm good at what I do as a craft. She's the real business person. I mean, she's amazing at building businesses.
Hey, every good, I don't care if it's corporation, partnership, whatever, you gotta.
She's amazing.
Yeah. All right. In the limited time we have left, you gotta tell them. Everyone wants to know about the TED Talk. So what happened? How'd it go?
Oh yeah.
Come on. Little claim to fame.
Grand Canyon University. They chatted with me. I decided to do a TED Talk on leaders change the world, but whole leaders will change it for the better.
More than 5 people showed up, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was the whole.
Come on, Andy.
The whole Cardinals stadium was packed. Come on, let's be honest. No,
Andy, speaking, we gotta go.
Here's part of the pain point with that, though. I had to study my script, my talk, which was about 7 minutes long. I had to have it completely memorized. So when I went out there, no notes, verbatim, memorized. So everyone in the back who's studying or preparing for their TED Talk is in front of the mirror, literally closing their eyes and rehearsing their talk, because that's kind of how they wanted us to do it. It's not the way I typically talk, but they wanted it dialed in. I went out there and I was so excited because to do a TED Talk is a massive thing. Like this is a bucket list item for me.
And let's be honest, it's a hell of a branding thing too.
It's a great branding thing. I did it and they forgot to record the audio from my mic. So
no way.
I talked to them afterwards and I'm like, you posted my TED Talk. It sounds horrible from an audio standpoint. And they said, well, you had your mic on you, but we lost that audio. So we had to take audio from the room. And it was the most echoey and disruptive. And I'm thinking, you're going to do a TED Talk and you're going to botch it like that. So I was so sad. I rarely actually send that to people because it's not up to par for one of our core values is excellence at Pursue Whole. So you'll see all of our content and our video is top notch. And I wish my TED Talk could be top notch, but the audio's not there. So I will probably have to do another one in the future. It was a great experience, but unfortunately, I got the bad audio.
Hey, Andy's 7 minutes claim to fame.
I know.
But hey, on that note, you're doing videos all the time.
Yeah.
Do you have your own? I think you're doing your own podcast too, kind of.
Yeah, we're doing our own podcast called the Pursue Whole Podcast. We interview leaders in business, entertainment, professional sports. We love to hear the highs and lows of their story, and we try to make it more of a documentary style interview. So we really want them to walk away with childhood, adulthood, leader, legacy framework and actually walk away with something they feel really proud about and that summarizes their whole story of the highs and lows in their journey.
Well, we'll make sure to put the links in that when we release this because I'm sure the audience would love to see some of those examples. Great. Well, Andy, I don't know where the hour went, but just thanks for coming on. But before I go, is there anything else you wanted to share that I forgot to ask you?
I don't think so. My favorite thing today was talking about breakdancing, honestly.
Yeah.
I love seeing my boys breakdance. I love breakdancing. And I just found out that breakdancing is going to be in the Summer Olympics for the first time ever. So this is to tell everybody,
look out for the Maurers.
Look out for the wave. Like the wave of breakdancing is coming back. It's an amazing sport, very creative. And if you haven't watched it, go ahead and watch it because it's pretty fun. And get your kids breakdancing. It's a really fun activity.
I love it. Thanks again, Andy, for coming on.
Absolutely.
And for those of you that want to look up Pursue Whole, Andy's all over the social media, so he's pretty good. Easy guy to find and easy guy to follow. So love what you're doing in the community and in the entrepreneurial and leadership space. We need more of you. So thanks for what you've done so far.
Thanks, JJ. Appreciate it.
You've been listening to the Mac and Bleu Show, brought to you by Blue Wave General Contracting. Be sure to subscribe to the Mac and Bleu podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Follow JJ Levinsky on LinkedIn and Instagram. Tune in every Monday